Welcome back to Scouching's 2025 NHL Draft Recap Series. Today we're looking at the Vancouver Canucks, and the Vancouver Canucks are always a fun team to watch add talent every year. They always seem to just find interesting guys who can do something decently well, and I think that trend continued this season. Starting things off, they got Braden Coots at 15th overall, and I had Coots ranked a little bit lower, but I really like Braden Coots. I really do think that if you look at his point production this year, and you think, oh, this is a small guy who doesn't really produce with some of the best picks in this year's draft, so why would this player get drafted in the middle of the first round? I can understand where that's coming from, but for me, Braden Coots brings a really high-end two-way game. I really was impressed with Coots all the way back at the Holinka camp this year, where there was this agile, skilled, creative two-way presence, making great reads off the puck, making quick, smart plays on the puck, getting pucks to the net, and all kinds of things, just going the right direction at a high pace of play. Braden Coots is a very Chandler Stevenson type of player where I could see his career being a little bit understated for a little while, but working in a third line role at some point on the right team with the right system could actually really benefit him. His offensive generation numbers in my data were really limited, which I think is a big driver of why his production might not have been what you might expect. But Seattle as a whole this season did not really have the most high-octane offensive machine relative to the rest of the team. He was actually pretty decent offensively, and you see some inside-driven playmaking here and there, but the real meat and potatoes of his game is his two-way impact, his intensity level, his ability to read the opponents and make play easier for everyone else. He might not be exactly the player that I would have taken in this range, but he would have been on the short list. I think Braden Coots could be a really good fit in Vancouver. At 47th overall, they drafted Alexei Medvidev, and this one surprised me a little bit. He was one of the first goaltenders drafted this year, and part of me is not particularly surprised after having seen a bit of him with London this year. Unfortunately, he was stuck behind Austin Elliott, who just won every game they put him in this season. Not that Medvidev deserved to be put on the bench for most of the year. There's a lot of deeper analytics that really favor his goaltending output. London was not the best defensive team out there this year. Don't get me wrong, they were very good, but the workload they put on their goaltenders was higher than you might expect at even strength, and Medvidev did a really good job keeping pucks out of the net, making tough saves. There's a bit of athleticism here, and better than anything, he's really young for this year's draft class. I imagine that he's going to be London's #1 goaltender next season, if not play a lot more than he did this year, and I would expect him to have a really good career in the OHL. Being a goaltender, I have no idea what his NHL projection will be. There's a lot that goes into that kind of thing, but from all indications, Medvidev is a decent pick. At 65th, they drafted Kieran Dervin, and I had Dervin at 70th on my list. He's a player that when I watched him with the St. Andrews team at the beginning of the year, it was really hard for me to pick through exactly what he brings that's really projectable. But when he got to the OHL, the numbers aren't amazing. But he did not play all that much with Kingston this year, and making the jump from Canadian high school to the OHL is really tricky. But I liked what I saw of Dervin. Long-term projection, long-term bet in my opinion, but he's got some good length on his frame. He's pretty raw physically, but there's a level of skill and finishing ability, and above all, to me, one-on-one confidence to get into better areas and push deeper into the offensive zone that I really wish some of the players that I had ranked really high had more of. Dervin is a player that I think could just develop really well from here. I'm not sure there's an NHL player that you can see right now that is likely to get there, but you see the parts, you see the pieces that might come together over time, and with enough experience and time in college, and I imagine with Kingston over the next few years, he'll get a lot more ice time than he did this past season. Moving to 143rd, they drafted Wilson Bjork. The pessimists among you might go, maybe this is Vancouver drafting a guy before they are not very good next year and get a chance to draft his younger brother Vigo, who is probably going to go really high next year. But Wilson Bjork is also a decent player to land in this range. I really didn't see an NHL pick, let alone 143rd overall, considering some of the names that were still left, but there is a pretty crafty and smart finisher who gets up and down the ice decently well and really picks apart defenses with his edges and moving around the ice really well. There's something here that I think I kind of like, but with players like Bjork, I always like to watch their men's league tape to see what they're like at the toughest levels, and Bjork just didn't strike me as enough of an offensive needle mover or enough of a defensive contributor to really project super well, but I see the logic. If you think your development staff can take him a ways and you really trust his development staff over in Sweden to build on the skating and the skill combination and really just develop the things that help him generate offense around the really sort of smart tactical level mind he has, maybe there's something here. And at 175th, they closed out their draft by drafting Gabe Sherrod. Sherrod's a player that I've seen Brampton play quite a bit this year. He never really stuck out to me, and I didn't pay too much attention to him. But looking at him since the draft, I really like Gabe Sherrod. I'm not really sure that he's an NHL level player because his style of play requires a really, really high talent floor where I'm not sure that's quite there yet with him, but there's an energy to his game that I really like. There's a really good finishing ability, and he just plays with a pace of play and an energy that, had I spent more time watching him this year, or I was on a team with other people and his name came up as an option, I wouldn't be against it. There might have been something that I was just missing having seen him in person a few times this year and not really noting much, but I do think there could be something here with Sherrod. He's got a bit of a physical presence, but in more of an annoying way rather than a I'm gonna smash myself through your chest type of way. Maybe this is a guy that's just a nice swing to take, and I could see him being one of these players that gets to the AHL one day and just takes teeny little baby steps up the lineup over the course of time. Maybe he gets himself an NHL look at some point. For a late round swing, considering some of the other ones we've seen in this series so far, I can see the logic behind why they would take a player like Sherrod. At 207th overall, the Vancouver Canucks closed out their draft class with Matthew Lansing, who played for a couple of teams this year in the United States Hockey League, and I really love Matthew Lansing. I have really grown to like a lot of the details in his game, and I think he's the type of player that plays the right way, plays really smart, selfless hockey up the middle. He's got some size, he's got the physicality, or at least the intention to play physically, but he just hasn't got that next level pace, or next level skill, or next level physical intensity that really identified him as a projectable NHL player. Ever since I saw him last summer at the 17U Selects tournaments, he was a player who I was always noticing through the Holinka, through the under-18s this year, here and there this season in the USHL, and he just continuously was a player where I'd look up his stats and go, these should be higher. He should be producing more, but he isn't. He was on my watch list at the end of the year. I really love him as a player, and I think it's a hugely positive way to close out Vancouver's draft class. And so for the Vancouver Canucks, I'm giving them a 2A. I think this was a rock-solid draft, start to finish. And that is not something I have been really honestly able to say for the last few years. They came away with at least a decent NHL player here in Braden Coots, and they took some interesting upside bets on Medvidev, Dervin, and Sherrod, and a nice flyer on Wilson Bjork. Alexei Medvidev has all of the right numbers behind his play that should drive him to some good success in the future. I really like the fundamentals Kieran Dervin brings to the game, but he is going to be a bit of a slow burn, I think, and just sort of take another set of baby steps in his process. Wilson Bjork, interesting option, interesting idea. Maybe they do get a chance at drafting his brother next year, and you got the Bjork brothers. But Gabe Sherrod is a nice swing to make as well at the end of the draft, and I liked what I saw of him since watching him after he was selected. A quick note before we finish today's video, I just wanted to mention, we are at 9,600 subscribers, give or take. Getting to 10,000 before next season would mean the world to me. So if you are not subscribed, which about half of our viewers aren't, I would suggest subscribing because I'm biased, but we have some good content coming, and our live shows twice a week are really fun. We get to talk about hockey, we talk about whatever else you want, we can talk about the time I ate an onion, we can talk about the future of the sport, we can talk about the current state of the NHL, and we just try to have some fun a couple times a week, and it's always great to see people come by. Thanks to everybody who already is subscribed. Let's get to 10K. That's a nice little project for us to do now. And with that, we're going to call it. If you liked the video, definitely like and subscribe. If you really liked it, definitely consider a subscription over at Scouching.ca, where you can get access to all kinds of fun data tools and our Discord server and plenty of other fun stuff that you're just not going to find anywhere else on the internet. So check that out at Scouching.ca. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.